Theodor Eicke was one of the most important generals of the Waffen SS during World War II. As an inspector and commander of the SS Totenkopfverband, he was one of those responsible for developing and reorganizing the concentration camp system throughout Germany before the war began. In 1939, he was responsible for the creation and formation of the Totenkopf Division with the units under his command. Theodor Eicke was born on October 17, 1892 in Hampont, Lorraine, when it was then part of the German Empire. He was the youngest of 11 children, and his father was a station chief. After attending school at age 17, he enlisted as a volunteer in the Bavarian army. At the start of World War I in 1914, Eicke served as an assistant pay clerk and infantryman, and for his bravery during the war, he was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class. Despite being decorated, Eicke spent most of the conflict behind the lines as a regimental paymaster. After the end of the First World War, Eicke began studying at a technical school in the city of Ilmenau, but was forced to abandon it due to lack of funds. Beginning in 1920, he pursued a career as a police officer until he left in 1923 due to rejection of the Weimar Republic. He eventually ended up working at IG Farben, a conglomerate of chemical companies, in Ludwigshafen and remained there as head of internal security. In December 1928, Eicke joined the National Socialist Party and at the same time the SA. He left in August 1930 to join the SS, where he quickly rose through the ranks. A year later, on October 15, 1931, he was promoted to the rank of SS Standartenführer by Heinrich Himmler, the Reichsführer of the SS. His political activities attracted attention to the point that Eicke was fired by IG Farben in 1932. He was discovered of preparing bomb attacks against Bavarian political opponents, for which he was sentenced in July 1932 to 2 years in prison. He escaped conviction thanks to the protection of Justice Minister Franz Gürtner. With orders from Himmler, he took refuge in Italy and was commissioned to take care of a camp for SS fugitives. On October 21, 1932, Eicke was promoted to SS Oberführer in Mussolini's fascist Italy. Once Adolf Hitler came to power in March 1933, Eicke returned to Germany. On June 26 of the same year, Himmler appointed Eicke commander of the Dachau concentration camp after complaints and criminal proceedings were filed against the camp's first commandant. The camp, created a few months ago, already had approximately 2,000 detainees. Eicke requested a permanent unit that was subordinate only to him, thus creating the SS Guard units. Theodor Eicke immediately reorganized the new bases in the Dachau concentration camp system, and he conceived a system that was used as a model for future camps throughout Germany. He established new surveillance provisions, which included rigid discipline, complete obedience to orders, and stricter disciplinary and punishment regulations for detainees. Uniforms were issued to both prisoners and guards, and it was Eicke who introduced the blue and white striped pajamas, which came to symbolize concentration camps throughout Europe. And the camp guards' uniforms had a skull and crossbones insignia on their collars. He was known for his coldness. He detested weakness, and this taught his men. Eicke's anti-Semitism and anti-Bolshevism, as well as his insistence on unconditional obedience, made a positive impression on Himmler. That is why on January 30, 1934, he was promoted to SS Brigadeführer. On June 30, 1934, by order of Hitler, what became known as the Night of the Long Knives took place. Eicke, along with other members of the SS, executed and imprisoned several SA leaders. It is said that Eicke was the one who entered the cell and placed a gun on the table in Rome's prison. When he refused to commit suicide, Eicke and his assistant entered and shot Rome on July 1, 1934. Demonstrating his total loyalty after having participated in this action on July 4, 1934, Himmler officially appointed Eicke inspector of the concentration camps. And 7 days later, he was promoted to SS Gruppenführer on July 11, 1934. In his role as concentration camp inspector, he initiated a massive reorganization of the camps in 1935. On March 29, 1936, The guards of the concentration camp's concentration and administrative units were officially designated as SS Totenkopfverband, naming Eicke as its commander. The smaller camps were dismantled and replaced by new, larger camps. The Dachau concentration camp remained, then the Sachsenhausen, Buchenwald, Mauthausen, Flossenburg, and Ravensbrück concentration camps were opened until 1939. All the organization, administration, and regulations of the camps run by the SS, both for guards and for prisoners, they followed the model established at the Dachau camp. The permanent indoctrination and brutality of Eicke himself prevented any sense of humanity in the guards. It was under Eicke's command in 1939 when the transformation of the SS Totenkopfverband began, with a view to converting them into units suitable for fighting on the front, constituting the SS Totenkopf Division, which was formed from the camp guards of Oberbayern, Brandenburg, Thuringen, plus soldiers from the Danzig Guard. Since he took office, he mobilized all of his SS contacts to ensure good equipment for his division. On November 14, 1939, trained as a division commander, he was renamed SS Gruppenführer and Lieutenant General of the Waffen SS. From that moment on, Eicke began a new career and had no more responsibilities in the organization of the concentration camps. He changed roles, but his convictions remained the same. In the invasion of Poland, Totenkopf units followed the German troops to the rear to put an end to internal resistance. The brutality and the large number of crimes carried out by the division were the subject of strong criticism from Wehrmacht officers. The division was so short of heavy vehicles that Eicke had to beg, borrow, and even steal what was needed to equip his units. On the Western Front in 1940, the division advanced through northern France. Upon arriving north of Cambrai, they fought successfully, taking 16,000 French prisoners, where they executed several Senegalese and Moroccan troops who were trying to surrender. Advancing northwards, the Lou Parody massacre occurred on May 27th, during which almost 100 British prisoners were executed. On May 31st, 1940, Eicke was awarded the Iron Cross First Class. They suffered heavy losses during the French campaign. It is estimated that Eicke lost 300 officers in 10 days of combat, suffering more casualties than the rest of the SS divisions. That is why it was necessary to transfer elements, this time from regular Waffen SS units and not from concentration camp guard battalions. To replace their losses, they requisitioned local vehicles and other French materials. In the June 1941 invasion of the Soviet Union, the Totenkopf Division was assigned to Army Group North. It went into action with the second wave, passing through Latvia and Lithuania, where it swept away all resistance. On July 7th, when he engaged in combat against the Soviet defenses, Eicke's vehicle ran over a mine and he was seriously injured in the leg. Eicke was rushed to Germany to receive maximum treatment. Meanwhile, the division continued its advance under the temporary command of SS Oberfuhrer Matthias Klein-Heisterkamp until July 18th, when he was replaced by SS Brigadeführer George Kepler. The division encountered strong opposition during the approach to Leningrad, spending the entire month of August in very heavy fighting. After 74 days, on September 19th, Theodor Eicke resumed command of the division when at the end of the same month, the division suffered a monumental Soviet counterattack at Lushno. The division was seriously weakened, and when the German advance began to lose strength, it had to entrench itself. They spent the end of 1941 defending themselves. On December 26, 1941, Eicke was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. The gradual attrition of combat left the Totenkopf at 50% of its original power. In January 1942, it was again in danger when the Soviets launched a major counterattack, which overwhelmed flanking army units. The division was surrounded along with several army units around the city of Demayansk. The Germans resisted tenaciously despite being vastly outnumbered by the enemy. In April, a German attack managed to establish a corridor to rescue troops trapped in the Demayansk pocket. No more than 14,000 men remained in the bag, all under the command of Eicke. After the siege was broken, the tough fighting did not subside, and in August the Totenkopf only had 2,700 troops. From June 1941 to March 1942, the division had lost 13,000 men. Upon successfully evacuating the remaining German troops, on April 20, 1942, Theodor Eicke was promoted to SS Obergruppenführer and General of the Waffen SS, awarding himself the Oak Leaves for his Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. In November 1942, she was withdrawn and transferred to France so she could rest and reorganize. The 3rd Panzergrenadier Division Totenkopf returned to the Eastern Front in early 1943 to join the newly formed 1st SS Panzer Corps, and in February it was already engaged in crude combat along with its sister SS divisions in the counteroffensive of the 3rd Battle of Kharkiv. On February 26, 1943, Eicke learned that the unit led by SS Sturmbannführer Karl Leiner was surrounded by the enemy. For this reason, he set out using a Fieseler 156 Storchlight aircraft to carry out aerial reconnaissance while searching for Leiner's position. Shortly afterwards, the plane he was traveling in was shot down by aerial fire from Soviet ground forces near the village of Artele, north of Lozova. The Totenkopf division was devastated by the news of the death of its leader. The place where Eicke's plane crashed was controlled by Soviet troops. That is why the members of the division voluntarily formed a Kampfgruppe whose task was to find Eicke's body. On the morning of February 27, 1943, the Kampfgruppe began the search under the command of SS Hauptsturmführer Lino Massari. Totenkopf artillery bombarded the surrounding area to protect the Kampfgruppe from enemy attack. Finally, when Eicke's body was found not far from the rubble, it turned out that his shoes had been stolen, as well as some of his badges and medals. As the search continued at the location, his oak leaves could be found, as well as several other personal items. German propaganda raised the figure of a hero in Theodor Eicke, and shortly after his death, one of the Totenkopf infantry regiments was named after him. At first, Eicke was buried in a grave for German soldiers near Orelka, but then, in September 1943, Himmler ordered that his remains be exhumed and reburied in the Hegewald Cemetery, south of Zhytomyr. When German troops withdrew from the Eastern Front in 1944, Eicke's body was still buried there. The body remained in Ukraine, where it was probably demolished by Soviet forces, as they were in the habit of destroying German graves. Theodor Eicke, the main manager in the creation of the Totenkopf division, is one of the main figures in the history of the SS. Charles Sinder, in his book Soldiers of Destruction, described him as the architect, builder, and director of the German concentration camp system before World War II.